A lot of people are going to try to demonize rice. They're going to say, oh, it's super high glycemic. It's a grain. It causes this and it causes that. I would say no. In a healthy individual that has proper digestion, they do just fine with it. It's an easy to digest starch for the most part, and there are different types. So let's start to go through these right now. Hi everyone, excited to get into today's topic, which is actually a listener-based request. So do keep in mind that although we might not be able to respond to every single comment or question, we do see them. I specifically look at them, my team gathers them, and what I try to do is if it hasn't already been answered on any of the 2,883 podcasts that I've done, I want to turn it into a show for you. So remember, if you have a question, the best thing to do is head on over to stevencabral.com/podcasts, and there's a search box. Just type in a keyword. So today it's on the healthiest type of rice you can eat. So we're going to go through that today. But you could just go to that search box and type in rice and see how many shows populate for rice, and then see if any of the titles that might be the right one for you. All right. And then again, if you ever can't find a show, probably we've talked about it. So you can always ask your health-based questions at cabralsupportgroup.com. We're there for you. My team and I, we want to help. All right, let's dive into today's show. Excited again, as I said, there are many different types of rice in the world. The majority of people in the world, believe it or not, live off of, are sustained on rice. And some of the longest lived populations across the blue zones also subsist off rice. So when we look at it, a lot of people are going to try to demonize rice. They're going to say, oh, it's super high glycemic. It's a grain. It causes this and it causes that. I would say no. In a healthy individual that has proper digestion and no bacterial overgrowth, SIBO, candida, intestinal permeability, they do just fine with it. Honestly, it's an easy to digest starch for the most part, and there are different types. So I'll go through white rice. I'm going to talk about red rice. I'm going to talk about black rice. I'll talk about brown rice, and I'll also talk about a rice that's often confused for a rice that's really more of a seed. So let's start to go through these right now. So the one that you've probably heard about the most is white rice. And so when we look at white rice, we know that compared to the others, especially brown rice, it's lower in fiber, right? And that's simply because it is milled more and processed more to remove the outer coating of it, which is essentially the bran and the germ. So now that we've removed that, we've removed a lot of the fiber. So what you're left with is the starch. Now, because of that, it has a longer shelf life, it's easier to digest, but it has less vitamins and minerals than the other rice, and it increases your glycemic load and index of the meal to a greater degree. So you might get a greater spike in blood sugar. Now, I will say this, the glycemic index was created based on eating one food at a time and seeing how it spiked blood sugar levels. Most people don't eat rice by itself. They consume it with beans or meat or fish and some fat. And when you do that, it lowers the overall glycemic load of the meal and then the specific blood sugar spike you would get from white rice. So most people don't have a massive issue with white rice, contrary to popular belief. They like it because it's easy to digest. It's inexpensive, and it has a long shelf life. So it's something to think about. I'm not telling you to eat white rice, but what I am saying is I'm always going to give you both sides of the coin. So white rice, not a lot of nutrients, okay? It doesn't have a lot of fiber, and it is essentially just starch. So if you're someone that likes to get in your carbohydrates and you're looking for a simple carbohydrate that's also essentially hypoallergenic, most people that don't even do well with grains do okay with white rice because there's almost nothing to react to. It's essentially glucose. Like it's just basically sugar. It's just starch. Now, again, you might say, well, that's going to spike blood sugar. Okay. Well, I also always ask then, in whom and how much, right? So unless you test your blood sugar or use a continuous glucose monitor, or don't eat it with protein or beans, which then beans add the fiber, right? And protein slows overall digestion. It may or may not be an issue. All right, so just something to think about. White rice, though, low on nutrients, low on fiber, easy on digestion and sensitivity. All right, now let's move on to brown rice. Brown rice is the other one. Most people have heard of brown rice. And what does that mean? Well, brown rice is keeping now the bran and the germ, or at least parts, right? And so it is going to be higher in vitamins, some B vitamins. It's going to be higher in fiber, and even certain minerals such as magnesium and selenium. So it can be a more nutritious form of rice. The higher fiber content also helps better control blood sugar response and glycemic index. So anyone looking to better control their blood sugar but wants to be able to consume rice, brown rice is a better option. Now, it takes longer to cook, much longer to cook than white rice, but that shouldn't deter you from it. It should just mean, okay, I need to spend an extra 10 minutes or so cooking my brown rice to allow me to get more of the fiber and more of the nutrients in that, okay? So that's brown rice. Now, let's get on to some other interesting ones. If you've never tried something called forbidden rice, I definitely recommend it. I've talked about it on the podcast probably like 5 or 6 years ago, but it's also called black rice. Now, the reason is a fun story behind it as to why it's called forbidden rice. So, legend has it that one of the emperors in ancient China reserved the rice for royalty only, himself and family only. So when the black rice was harvested and cultivated, it was for royalty only. So what that meant is that that was now forbidden for everybody else. Now, why would an emperor or someone want black rice? So black rice is actually very high in antioxidants. Unlike other grains that are typically white or brownish in color, this is black. But the black pigment actually comes from a very powerful antioxidant called anthocyanin, the same antioxidant that's also in things like wild blueberries. So a potent antioxidant, great for the immune system, great for squelching free radical damage. It also contains maybe a bit more protein, contains a good amount of fiber, and it contains iron. So it helps to build up the blood to a greater degree. So there's lots of, whenever something has antioxidants or more antioxidants, it can act as a free radical scavenger, so helps lowering oxidative damage on the body. And it also can help with balancing healthy levels of inflammation. So it's typically gluten-free. Most of these rice should be gluten-free, but it's a great one to look at. Definitely a little bit more expensive. Has more of a nutty flavor. We serve that in my house probably once a week. It's one that we like to cook. My daughters eat it. Tastes delicious. Put a little sea salt. You can put sea salt. I put sea salt and olive oil on all of these, and sometimes I add a little black pepper. That's how I enjoy my rice. You can enjoy it however you like. All right, some people use, my wife sometimes actually cooks it in a little bit of coconut cream or coconut oil, and it makes a nutty coconut flavored rice. That's a really nice way to do it too. I don't love that with black rice as much. I like that more with brown rice or white rice, but just letting you know. Okay, next up we have red rice. So red rice goes by multiple different names. I've seen it as volcanic-based rice, but it's another one that contains antioxidants, not dissimilar to black rice, but does not contain the anthocyanin. And it contains iron and zinc. So that's actually what gives it more of that unique red color. So iron and zinc, especially iron, can lead to more of the reddish color. So if you're someone who's maybe looking to get a little bit more iron into your diet, well, you might look at adding some red rice to your diet. I'll give you one of my favorite brands in a moment that makes all of these. Okay, so we talked about the antioxidants. We talked about the inflammation with all these black rices and red rices, those powerful ones. One I wasn't going to mention that's along the same lines is green rice. I've talked about that on a product on a Friday review, product review as well. It's actually white rice though, mixed with chlorophyll. So it's still white rice, so it still has a higher glycemic index, but the chlorophyll obviously has a lot of antioxidant benefits. And chlorophyll is a natural scavenger. It's a blood builder. It's a natural scavenger of toxins in the body too. So it's an interesting one. It actually wasn't on my list, but it popped into my head, and so I wanted to give you that one here today. All right, the last one is technically not a rice. It's a seed, which means that many people, even on grain-free diets or paleo-style diets, will still eat wild rice, because wild rice is considered a grass seed. And if you've ever had wild rice, it is distinctly different from all other different types of rice. Wild is a great name to be able to describe it. It's nutty, it's aromatic, it's super high in fiber. It's actually fairly high in protein for a starch. There is B vitamins in it, good amount of magnesium and manganese. It's definitely lower glycemic index. It's slower digesting, and great cardiovascular wise, great blood sugar wise, not as easy to digest. That's the one downside I would say to that. One, flavor, not as many people love it, but I think you can cook it and actually make it pretty tasty. But the other is also just slower to digest, because it is a hardy, I want to say the word grain, hardy grain or seed, right? It's very structured and a lot more chewy. You need to break it down a bit more. So very distinct taste, super high in nutrient benefits, and even in terms of protein and grains go, fairly high as well. So what I would say is this: there's really no bad rice to go with. The most negative one you would say is white rice. However, we will sometimes use white rice in our practice for someone needing to gain weight, but they have a lot of gut issues, autoimmune issues, or sensitivities. Because white rice has nothing really to it except the starch. And for those that need a little bit more carbs in their diet, we'll actually use that. Now, for everybody else, we'll certainly lean more towards the brown rice, black rice, red rice, or wild rice, depending on what they enjoy. And it's also nice to rotate those. So the brand that has all of these, I have no relation to them whatsoever, is Lotus. Lotus actually makes of good quality rice, and they make all of these different types if you want to give them a shot. You can find them obviously at your local grocer, and I'm sure they're on Amazon as well. Another good brand that does test for arsenic and metals in their rice, which you want to be careful about if you eat a lot of rice, is Lundberg. I believe that brand is out of California. So I've talked about those both before. I can definitely recommend them. Of course, rice might not be right for you, and if it is, okay, you can still stay grain-free if you want. You can have your yams, your purple sweet potatoes, your yuca, cassava, all of those different things, and that's fine as well. But for those people, like myself, that enjoy some rice with some of their meals, hopefully this podcast was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions, and if there's other types of rice that you like, that you'd recommend, feel free to leave that in the comments below. Thanks everyone. Have an amazing day. All the show notes, the takeaways will be at stephencabral.com/2883 for today's show. Thanks so much for tuning into today's show. Before you go, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I want to make sure that you're getting our daily content, not missing out on anything functional medicine, wellness, weight gain, weight loss, anti-aging, living longer, stronger, and all of the most cutting-edge research. And if there's any topics you want to hear, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Take care.